Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna. If you're new to the channel, welcome. In this video, we're going to take a look at how you can draw vehicles moving in a dynamic way. And in order to get this conversation started, let's just draw something that we can all understand. We're going to go ahead and just draw a simple box. Now, with this box, we can see that it is largely just straight angles, and it doesn't seem like it has any kind of tension or movement to it. But if we were to add some angles, we get this idea that the box actually has some movement. It has some velocity associated with it. And that's really the concept that we're going to be working from to go ahead and create some dynamic vehicles. And you can do this in a 3/4 front or 3/4 back perspective, or even a view where you're looking up from underneath, say, for example, a worm's eye view. If you have some kind of a vehicle that is just going over top of you, this kind of trapezoidal shape, I think, becomes really, really important. So let's go ahead and start by actually drawing a vehicle. And I've talked about this in previous videos. I'll just make this really, really simple. We'll just start off with the side view here. I'm holding down the Shift key to create straight lines. I'm going to create the silhouette of a car. I'm starting off with the side view because I want to show you a really nice way of cheating that perspective. So those are the wheel wells. We've got the windshield, just like a standard generic car. And you can apply this to even more fantastical vehicles as well. So we've got tires, we've got the door, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to use the perspective tool. We'll click on one of the corners, we'll pull it back, and then on a new layer, what I'll do is I'll just kind of fill this out. Maybe throw in some lights. Just something to go ahead and get this conversation started. Got our other wheels. But this car still looks like it's not really moving. So how do we make this car seem like it's actually going really fast, for example? Well, let's make a copy of what we have and move this original off to the side so we can have a point of comparison. First thing I'm going to do is I'll just drop the opacity here, and I'm going to push the angle down a little bit. And instead of having this straight vertical line, I'm going to have a little bit of an angle. It's almost like it's creating a point. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll create these points. And right away, you can start to see that there's a little bit more energy in terms of the way this car is actually being propelled. And then we've got the wheel well. And now we've got the wheels. And with the wheels, instead of having them vertical, I'm just going to have them more at an oblong angle. And this also gives us a sense of movement. Now, is that realistic? No, but if you're trying to create something that looks dynamic, if you want to convey the idea of movement and speed, you can take some liberties with that. People will understand what you're trying to convey. So I've got these lights here, and we've got the door, etc. So that's kind of phase one. Phase one is really creating more of an angle. And you can start to see that there is a little bit more dynamism with this particular pose of this vehicle here. So now we're going to take it to part two. How do we continue to make this look like it's going at a high rate of speed? Well, what we can do is for these back lines here, this is something that I see a lot in modern comics, this idea of using these I don't know what you would call them, but little vibrations. I see this a lot in artists like Daniel Warren Johnson, who I really admire as an artist. He's a fantastic modern comic artist. He's currently working on the new Transformers book. Highly recommend picking that up. But he does this particular technique where you can see that there's like some shimmer or some kind of they're not speed lines, but I would call them more like speed bumps. No, I don't know. Speed points. I don't know. Maybe there's a better term. If you have that term, list it below in the comments. I'm curious to know what you actually call these, but I call them little speed vibrations. And that automatically starts to give this car some additional momentum. And what we can do from there is we can indicate one or two speed lines. And this also gives us a sense of speed. Now, I'm just working on the basic outline of the car here. I'm not really going in and adding a ton of details. But if we wanted to make the wheels look like they were moving fast, we could indicate movement by using this type of a pattern here. We can add some dust that's kicked up from behind it. And then what we can do, once we have this in place, I like to also use the warp tool. So in Photoshop, if you right click on the transform tool, choose warp, and you go up to warp and you choose arc. That's a little bit too much, but if we just dial that back a smidge, we're getting a little bit more of a rounded form, as if the car is actually, like if this is the street, the car is actually going so fast that it's literally, it has some air underneath it. And that's another great way of conveying speed, right? You can throw some speed lines or speed shadows underneath the vehicle, and it really starts to give a sense of momentum to the car. So we started from this point right here, and now we've gotten to this point right here where we've got a car that is moving at a really high rate of speed. You don't have to have a lot of gratuitous lines to really convey this, just a few. But the little shimmer that I'm describing here is, I think, very central to that. And it really works well with when you're drawing straight edges, just replace those straight edges with that shimmer. And I think it's going to go a long way towards conveying that type of movement. So let's do one more. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge all these three together. And I'll just start off by just drawing a car from a box, just the way that I typically always approach this. Because you want to understand how to draw something in proper perspective without having to use too many cheats, because there's going to be some times where you're just going to have to just draw it. So I've got this windscreen here, some type of a sedan. Let's go ahead and actually extend the back. The nice thing about these boxes is you can actually extend to add some length. Like if I wanted to give this thing a trunk, I could go ahead and do that. These are all still roughs, you know. Details come in after you establish your main perspective and your main forms. So it doesn't look super exciting right now, but that's okay. So we can delineate the door, and we'll go ahead and throw in some wheel wells. And we'll just denote areas where the bumpers are. I'm not really super worried about that. So we've got this set up right here, and we'll draw the wheels. And those wheels are going to have some thickness because we're going to see a little bit more of the thickness of that wheel. So given that, how do we make this look dynamic? So again, make a copy of it, drop the opacity, and we're going to really exaggerate those points. So I'll just do something like this. I'm also going to, for the windshield here, I'm going to actually lean it back a little bit. You know, when something is going really fast, there's almost like this kind of a curve shape, or kind of a, you get a lot of tension, right? Imagine like a tree blowing in a storm, right? This is a tree in its normal configuration, but when the wind is hitting that tree, violent wind, you start to see it bend. So I'm starting to find ways of really pushing that shape. So again, we've got our box. I'm taking those straight lines, curving them up a little bit, like so. I'm going to add a little bit of an oblong shape to the wheels. Let me hide the underdrawing there. We might even see a little bit of the top part of that hood. And then I will add that shimmer. So shimmer and dust, I think, does a great job of conveying speed. So I'm replacing all those vertical lines with something like that. And this is one way of doing it. I'd like to emphasize that every technique that I'm showing you here is just a suggestion. It is not a absolute, right? There are other ways that artists can approach this, but this is just something that um, I do within my own work, and I find it to be very appealing. But it's not a prescriptive approach. Everything that I'm sharing with you on my channel is just basically how one artist, me, goes about doing things. It is not meant to say that this is the only way to do anything, because that would be just ridiculous. Okay, so I've got this shape here. We can see that there's a little bit of some speed that is now being applied to this vehicle. We can throw in some additional dust. And again, we'll use the transform tool. We'll choose warp. You don't need to use warp, but I'm just making this simple and just trying to show you in a very quick way how you can exaggerate this. So I've got a little bit more curvature. And then I'll just draw some kind of a ground plane. I'll just kind of exaggerate this to make this a little bit more rounded. Throw in some, I'm not using a solid shadow. The shadows themselves are actually represented by these really thick lines that are placed in close proximity to one another to give us that sense of movement. And then you can also draw whatever other details you want. Sometimes with windshields, you can, because you're usually seeing a lot of things being reflected by the windshields, have, it's gonna look like kind of like a blur. And that's totally fine here too. So this applies to things like tanks, cars, trucks, whatever. You can certainly use this technique for whatever vehicle you're trying to convey movement on. So the real trick, just to kind of summarize this, is boxes are static. They don't really move, right? And if we draw that box in a 2-point perspective, whether the box is coming towards us, like in this direction, or going away from us, we really want to find a way to kind of create some angles and tension. You can even add some curvature to it too. And it starts to feel like it's in motion. So I hope you found this video to be useful. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up so more folks can find it. I really appreciate all of the support that everyone has been giving to the channel. Thank you so much for your comments, your kind words. And I really hope to foster and build a community with this channel and help more folks feel more comfortable drawing digitally. So thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.